All right. Hello, everybody. What is happening? Thank you for joining me today. We're going to have a special event today on hormonal balance. Kind of a big topic. Hormonal balance. That's all I wrote in the title, Beth. So Beth is going to be Beth and I are going to be chatting about just some strategies to balance hormones. I told everybody, Beth, that you would reduce hot flashes and belly fat and migraines and headaches and weight issues and eating sometime between 1 and 3 when people wake up. And I said that we would solve all those problems today. Does that sound pretty good?
Okay. It sounds like a big challenge.
And diabetes and
Right.
metabolic syndrome. We might as well since we're at
Oh gosh.
it. Yes. So I'm going to try to put myself on spotlight and Beth at the same time here. All right. Can everybody see both of us right now? Like, can you see two of us?
Yes.
Awesome. So Natalie, can I? It's funny how some people can't. Um, so you should be able to see both Beth and I on the spotlights.
I can't, but I'm on an iPhone.
Oh, iPhone. Okay, got it. Yeah, so you may be able to if you change your own view to speaker view, that may be able to change. But I've always wondered why. Sometimes people can see it, some people don't. So anyway, so Beth, welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Brian.
So yeah, so Beth is how long have we known each other, by the way?
Really long time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm trying to remember, like 10, 15 years, something like that, Brian.
Yeah, it's been a while. So
Yeah.
so Beth has always been a great wealth of knowledge. She's a clinical nutritionist, certified nutritionist, and she works for a company called Designs for Health. A lot of you know them because I've been selling their products for a very long time, but they sell their products to functional med doctors, naturopaths, acupuncturists, chiropractors, nutritionists, anybody that's kind of interested in licensed healthcare practitioner of some sort. So what she does is she goes, I think you still do this, right? You go to people's offices. I think it's had a little delay on that, but you used to go to people's offices, doctors, and just like a pharmaceutical rep, but you would talk to the docs and the nutritionists about the products and educate them and give samples of products just like a rep, but with the healthier consequence, right?
Yeah. With
Yes.
nutraceuticals instead of pharmaceuticals.
Yes. So
Yeah.
nutraceuticals instead of pharmaceuticals. Yes.
Yeah.
But we've had discussions before. It's not that you're against pharmaceuticals, right? It's
No.
we find a way to put them together, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I also see clients privately too. So I do both, and that keeps me on my toes. Yeah,
Yes.
and I love working with practitioners and people who motivate and guide people like you do, Brian, because then I get to like kind of impact people, like more people that way. So that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so this is a pretty big topic, so we have a bunch of folks taking on this 6-week project. This is something we do every year. It's called the Little Black Dress Project. Do you remember that?
I do.
I can't remember. I think I've had you speak at something like this before. I can't remember though. We've
I
done a
did
lot of different
something a
things.
while ago. Yeah, I don't know if it
Yeah,
was this
I
actual
don't think it was.
project, but yes, I remember doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the
Mhm.
past, we've talked about detoxing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so Designs for Health has a great detoxification program that I like. They have a few different ones, but 14 and a 21-day detoxification program, and we've talked about that. But so we have a bunch of ladies that are taking on our Little Black Dress project, and basically the goal is we have a deadline, and ultimately we have some nice weather coming up, and we have some nice weather here right now, and people are in this spring phase, and I always think this is a great time to reset, cleanse, and get ready for summer. So that was kind of the purpose of Little Black Dress, to kind of get people ready for that. And my main focus is digestion and blood sugar balance.
Mhm.
With the goal of helping the immune system and balancing hormones. But
Yep.
I would like to chat about just your thoughts of balancing hormones. Most of these ladies here 30 plus, you know,
Mhm.
30 was
Okay.
quite a range.
Anywhere like 30 to 50s, 30 to 60s.
I think we keep going. I guess I got some few other
Okay,
folks
30
here.
to
So yeah, if
70s.
you
Oh,
guys want to
I see
throw
people
out
are
some,
posting in the chat.
yeah,
Good.
so yeah, that actually is great, right? I know. Yeah. So write down your ages if you're proud of your age and you're like, hey, throw it out there. So Joni's 78. She's having a hell of a
Awesome.
year too. She's been working with me. She's lost 20 plus pounds this year. So
Awesome.
yeah, some people think they go, I'm too old to lose weight, right? Or my hormones are too old.
Hmm.
Suzette 62. Dang girl, you're looking pretty good. All right. So yeah, so and Chris, we've talked about her a little bit, and she's here somewhere. Um, but she's speaking of hormones, and my wife's turning 51 soon, but she's suffered from a few different things that are hormonally related. Breast tenderness, which is one that was it seemed like it was like 10 years, a decade of that. And now, like, that's all gone, but it's like it was replaced by headaches.
Hmm.
So, those are some things. I don't know how many other of you ladies have those things, but that seems to be kind of par for the course, maybe with aging and hormonal
Yeah.
imbalances.
Well, I mean, definitely hormones shift. I mean, each decade hormones are shifting, and it seems like most women experience really dramatic hormone changes in like their 40s and 50s. Those tend to be the years where we see really dramatic changes in hormones. But but we can't really separate like just like estrogen and progesterone from all of the other hormones, right? So you were talking about digestion, right? And there's such a connection to hormones there because so many of our hormones are metabolized through like the gut and the liver. And so if our digestion is off, then that's obviously going to affect our hormone balance. So just the fact that you're working with your clients on digestion is like a huge step in balancing hormones. So I think that's really, really important to remember that we just can't like separate the hormones. Like it's all interconnected.
So let's touch on that for a minute, because I talk about this a lot, and I think people get tired of me saying it, and it's good to hear from somebody else.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell me, like, explain that correlation between improved digestion and hormonal balance.
Yeah. I mean, so actually one of the symptoms of hormone imbalance is like indigestion, like gas and bloating and, all of that. So, I think like, if you're wondering, well, do I have hormone imbalance? I mean, that can be a symptom of hormone imbalance, as well as like fatigue, the headaches, things like breast tenderness. Those are all, signs of hormone imbalance. But yeah, so, when you have, your good gut bacteria are responsible for helping to metabolize hormones like estrogen. And then your liver plays a huge role in detoxification of not only your hormones like estrogen, but also your xenoestrogens, that come in from the outside, right? And so, if we're not supporting good gut health and not supporting our organs of detoxification like liver and gallbladder, then that can really affect our hormone balance big time.
Mhm.
And in a lot of people it might cause like not too much of the what they call proliferative estrogens, the estrogens that can cause trouble, right? And so that can be problematic if somebody's not taking care of their gut health and their liver health long term. Yeah.
Got it. So what are some things that you recommend for liver
Yeah,
and
for
helping with
liver. Yeah.
balance?
That's a really, for supporting those really crucial detoxification pathways, I really recommend like the cruciferous vegetables are absolutely critical for that. I mean, they're huge. And that's because they are a rich source of sulforaphane.
Yeah.
And sulforaphane is critical, for that, the metabolism and detoxification of those steroid hormones, and also the xenoestrogens too. So, think foods like, and you can eat, and I always recommend eating a variety of foods and when they're in season, right? Because what I find is a lot of people, they say, oh, this is good, and then that's all they eat. And then that can cause imbalances. So, your cruciferous vegetables include broccoli and cauliflower and kale and watercress and radishes. And, all of those types of, bok choy would be another one. So those are vegetables that are absolutely critical to supporting detoxification. If, there are supplements you can take that are very rich in sulforaphane too. But, start with the food. And then if you're still having issues, then I would, move to a broccoli seed and broccoli sprout extract, like a combination of those two. Also, broccoli sprouts, by the way, I should have mentioned broccoli sprouts. They're incredibly rich in sulforaphane. I'm really lucky. My farmer's market, we have these women that grow all of these beautiful sprouts. And they have tons and tons of broccoli sprouts, and they actually have radish sprouts. So I always get the spicy salad mix if you can find that somewhere. It's just amazing if you can use that every day. It's like your therapeutics. It's like taking a supplement. Yeah.
Got it. What about like throwing these in a smoothie?
Yeah. Well, definitely. I mean, people will put like, arugula and kale and those type of vegetables in a smoothie. I can't do broccoli and those kind of things in a smoothie, but yeah, I definitely will do like the kale and those vegetables in a smoothie. But like again, I wouldn't overdo any one vegetable. And the reason I say that is just because, there are certain plants just that take in more toxins, from the soil. And so even if it's like organic kale, it can still, like if there's lead in the soil, it can like really bring in that lead. So that's why I just, caution people to always use variety and eat what's in season. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. There's a lot. I see it a lot on a daily basis where, because everybody sends me their weight and body fats that I work with, and I've kind of noticed a few different things. Like some people do horribly on raw vegetables.
Yep.
Right. So we were talking about digestion, and so somebody may hear this and go, "Oh my God, I'm going to eat all this, these sprouts and these great things that you just mentioned," but there's a lot of folks that can't digest that stuff, right?
Exactly. And so if that's the case, I mean, it's that sulforaphane, it can cause gas and bloating. And some people might actually have something like small intestinal bowel overgrowth where those foods just kill them. And that's not, so what you can do is you can still get some benefits from, like, for example, broccoli and cauliflower and, kale and all that, just by cooking them lightly. I personally cannot eat, I've never been able to eat broccoli or cauliflower raw. I actually just don't feel good when I eat it raw, but when I eat it, steamed for about 10 minutes, where it's just like, you put a fork through and it's just tender, and then I could, eat like, a whole plate of it. So if that's the case, I would just like lightly roast or lightly steam the broccoli or cauliflower, kale, whatever you're eating. Other things, are not going to be, you just don't really cook. You definitely, like, arugula is great, and arugula mixes in so nicely, like with egg scrambles or omelets. So that's another way to, get that vegetable in. Doesn't carry quite the, the weight, but in that case, and if you really have a problem with all, that whole class of vegetables, even cooked, then you could look at taking something like, a capsule. Yeah. I don't think you would have the same issues with it. Yeah.
Oh, Chris is next to me. She goes, "A capsule of what?"
Broccoli seed extract, Chris. But, I think also with, just in general with hormone balancing, it's really important, especially if you're in the stage of life where your hormones are kind of fluctuating pretty widely, to really, look at nourishing, as a primary diet. I would recommend, more of an anti-inflammatory type diet, which I'm sure that you talk about, Brien. But, remove like the foods that we know are highly allergenic for a lot of people, or can cause inflammation. And certainly this is not the case for everyone, but I would at least have people do like an elimination diet to figure out if these foods are inflammatory for them, like your gluten containing foods, your dairy, your sugar, all of that, because, inflammation is at the root of everything, right? So if we have inflammation, that's just going to create imbalance in our hormones as well. So, I think at least testing out anti-inflammatory diet is really, really important to, do it for 2 to 3 weeks. And then you can reintroduce, one food at a time to see if like the inflammation comes back. And often, interestingly enough, you can tell when you introduce the food back in, if it's inflammatory for you, because you'll gain weight. You'll get on the scale, and then the next day you'll weigh 2 to 3 pounds more because your immune system is actually mounting a response to the food. And then, of course, it's bringing histamine and all that to the site. And then that causes water gain. And then your weight goes up. So that's like an actual pretty easy way to tell if a food is inflammatory for you.
Which is why I have everybody weigh every day.
Yeah.
So yes. Yeah. So I know people, think it's a little bit above and beyond the ideal, but it really does give us a lot of great information to weigh daily. That's just one example of one reason why one's weight may go up, but definitely a good one if you've eliminated something, then reintroduce. If, along with that bloating and gas, you'll like, oh,
yeah,
I got 2 more pounds here today.
Yeah, and it's so interesting how one person's like, their food that just like nourishes them and takes them to the next level is another person's poison. So it's really important to remember that, because we can get really, oh my gosh, that's the best food ever. Everyone's talking about it. I got to try it. Doesn't mean it's good for you. It might be good for the general population, but it might not work so well for you. So, those are things to remember. But I also, I really, really feel like the good fats, you have to have the good fats, right, to make hormones in the first place. And so, you have, actually you need cholesterol to make all of your steroid hormones. So one thing, it's as women, go through menopause, often what will happen is cholesterol and sometimes will go up. But we can't, on the other hand, let our cholesterol go too low, because if it's too low, then we're just not going to be able to make any steroid hormones at all. So I mean, you do need to have like an adequate amount of cholesterol. You just don't want it too high, right? But you also don't want it too low. And sometimes people that are on statins, actually their cholesterol goes way too low, and then other things start happening that are not pleasant. But the essential fatty acids, I know that you talk about that, Brien, the essential fatty acids, but I mean, I can't think of a better like category for hormone balance. And, they just decrease all of that systemic inflammation. So your omega-3 essential fatty acids that you get from fatty fish and chia seeds, walnuts have some, omega-3s in them, are just all examples of like foods that would be very, very nourishing. Also, your other good fats would be like your monounsaturated fats, which would be like your olives and your olive oil, your avocados, and your avocado oil. And then also your fats that come from your nuts and other seeds. So those are all like examples of like really good nourishing foods. And nuts, besides and some people don't do well with nuts, I realize that, but if you can tolerate nuts, I mean, remember that you're also getting magnesium, zinc, selenium, all of these other minerals that are so important for blood sugar regulation, thyroid health, adrenal health. So the list goes on and on. So I really like to emphasize, that category.
Got it. So
Yeah.
I got a couple questions for you.
Okay.
I got 2 questions on the chat box right now. So Wendy said, is it just bloating and gas and weight gain that are symptoms of an inflammatory response?
No. It can be it can be fatigue. It can be a feeling of brain fog, like right after you eat the food, or even, so remember when you put a food in your body, it usually stays in your body for about 72 hours, right? Until it's eliminated. So you could have a delayed reaction and feel it either right after you eat, but you might not feel it till later that day or the next day, because it's going to stay in your body for about 72 hours. So things to look out, besides like the digestive and besides the weight gain, would be things like, again, just like the fatigue, the brain fog. Also, with dairy, it's really common, like more like the congestion, post-nasal drip. I've had people reintroduce foods back in and their blood pressure goes back up. I mean, these like just, I actually had a woman who did a cleanse, and she had, what is it? When you have why am I blanking on? When you have too much pressure in your eye, not macular degeneration, glaucoma, sorry. And while she was on the cleanse, she went to see her doctor, and her pressure in her eye, her ocular pressure, had decreased significantly. And he asked what she was doing. So really interesting that just what she was eating was contributing to the increase in ocular pressure, because it's, has to do with inflammation. So she was obviously eating foods that were causing inflammation in the body. Other things would be like you get increased cravings again, like your cravings really come back. And anxiety, in some people it's anxiety, or like an increased, like you can take your pulse, and if you have an increased pulse, like way above what it normally is, like about 10 over what it normally is, that's also a sign that you could have a sensitivity to that food.
And that's something, by the way, a lot of our folks have heart rate monitors. A lot of these things you asked me a little while ago if I'm sure you're talking about omega-3 fatty acids. It's funny because I used to, but there's just, I kind of go in waves with things, and right now I'm stuck on digestion. I've been just really focused on digestion, but so yeah, I haven't been mentioning omega-3 fatty acids as much as I should be. So yeah, definitely, that's a good reminder for me. But a lot of us have heart rate monitors, so we use them during our classes, and almost everybody, it seems like most people have heart rate monitors these days, whether it be an Apple Watch, but it's more accurate when you have it at the chest, right? So what I would recommend for those of you that want to test out a food is sit calmly for 5 minutes or so, and then test a food and see what happens with your heart rate, as Beth was just saying. If it goes up a significant amount, I mean, 10 beats would be pretty significant. But if it goes up or down, if it goes up, something's wrong. That's a good sign that your heart rate's racing, your stress response is on. So that's a good way of checking the food in a cheap manner.
Yeah. And bringing up stress, I mean, you can't talk about hormones without stress management. I mean, it's just, if you're stressed all the time, then, then your cortisol is elevated, which then affects your thyroid function. And, the list just goes on, and you don't digest as well. So, the elevated cortisol, chronically elevated cortisol, is definitely an issue when it comes to hormone balance. And especially, as women go into menopause, ovaries aren't making estrogen anymore. Well, the adrenal glands, if they're still healthy, will make very, very tiny amounts of, those hormones like estrogen. But if they've been drained and the person's been stressed out and burned out, for years, like, working really late hours, taking care of a family, that type of thing, and they get to that point and they don't have even that little bit of estrogen, then that's when, really bad, like the hot flashes and all of that, might kick in for that person, because they just don't have that tiny little reservoir, which can be really protective.
So then they need more estrogen.
Yes. So they're not getting, that's why they're just like, they're just dying, you're just like, I haven't been through it yet. So I'm hoping, but I know a lot of women who are just like constantly like, sweating and it was really, really, it can be super, super uncomfortable. So as far as, hot flashes go, again, I think it has, just really trying to manage stress. That would be one thing. Sometimes, some mild phytoestrogens can be really helpful with that too. Something like black cohosh, or eating foods even, for a while. I don't recommend eating a lot of soy foods, but sometimes when you're going through like you're getting into the menopausal and you're eating, like if it's non-GMO, small amounts of, fresh tempeh or tofu, every once in a while, those mild phytoestrogens can be really helpful. Yeah.
So in ladies, generally around that menopausal time period, have hot flashes. That's a pretty good indicator that they're low in estrogen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
we hear a lot about estrogen dominance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, too much estrogen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
with
And
plastics and soy again, right? So
yes, that's,
yeah.
too much. And that's actually a problem in men now too. You see the men now with, the breasts and, so estrogen dominance has also become a problem in men. And I see it all the time. And I didn't ever used to. And now within the last, I would say 5 years, I've been really noticing it a lot. And, I think it has a lot to do.
You're hanging out in the wrong circles, by the way. Yeah, I'm just kidding.
I just live in a city. I just walk around.
Exactly. Yes.
All those men that are sitting all day in those tech jobs and like
Yes.
drinking, out of plastic bottles and,
Yes.
eating like, who knows, candy. I don't know what they're eating, but I actually have heard someone was once telling me like the diet of a typical tech worker was terrible. But I think, so we do really have to, estrogen dominance also, just to make it clear, doesn't mean that you have too much estrogen. It might just mean that you have more estrogen in relation to progesterone. So you can have estrogen dominance where you just have too much estrogen. But when you get into your perimenopausal years, in your 40s, usually estrogen dominance is that you just have a lot more estrogen than you do progesterone. And that creates like a really, a huge a And that, again, is like going back to, the basic, a lot of it has to do with regulating blood sugar, Ryan, what you were talking about. Yep. So really got to regulate that blood sugar. So if there's estrogen dominance, things like PCOS, it's very, very important to get on a low glycemic diet. And really look at, increasing proteins and fats, get rid of the refined carbs, make sure your carbs are just coming from low starchy vegetables, every once in a while, maybe having a few starchy vegetables, so to help with serotonin. But, for the most part, that's the kind of diet you'd want to do for PCOS. There's a product that Designs for Health has called Sensitol, which is absolutely amazing for PCOS, but it's working on a lot of different levels of how it's regulating glucose. But that would be, one of the main things for PCOS. And then being very, if you have estrogen dominance, I would be very, very careful. Like look at, what you're using. Are you drinking out of plastic bottles? Are you heating foods in, plastic containers? Are you using cleaners, that are not, that are chemical type cleaners instead of, your safer type of cleaners in your house? What kind of personal, skincare products are you using? Are you using skincare products that are loaded with parabens and phthalates, which are they're endocrine disruptors, and they can cause that estrogen dominance, unfortunately. So it's just good to do like a quick scan of that. And, EWG.org is really great for that. They have all kinds of help there. Yeah.
Great. And I think we're going to be having a talk on some skincare soon. So that's good.
Oh, good. Yeah. The good stuff. Yeah.
Yes. So Chris had a question here. How do we know what you said?
Hi, Beth. I was just wondering, so I feel like I might have the estrogen dominance thing going.
Hi, Chris.
But, about a year ago, I was given advice to go ahead and eat flax seeds, right? So how do you know which one you have? And then, do you need just to go run and get a blood test by your naturopath? And how involved is that?
I mean, they can definitely, the thing with doing a blood test is that it's just like one picture, like it's just like one small picture, like you do the blood test and maybe your hormones look like that at that particular minute that you took it, but it doesn't mean that that's how they always look. Right. But yeah, with estrogen dominance, you're going to have like the more symptoms like breast tenderness and things like gain
migraines.
Of migraines, a gain of weight around the middle. Now I know that what can be helpful for example, like estrogen dominant symptoms, like if it's like sore breast, that type of thing, and the headaches, a little bit of iodine. So making sure that you're getting iodine in the diet is really important. Mainly you're going to get iodine in the diet through seafood. Also, so seafood's big. and then iodized salt. And a lot of people don't use iodized salt anymore. They use sea salt, which is great, but it was like a huge source of iodine for Americans for a really long time. And then we just took it out. So most people's multivitamins will have a little bit of iodine, which I think is, which is a good idea in most cases. I know that folks with Hashimoto's often like will try to avoid iodine, but for the most part, it's really going to be helpful with that. And of course, it also isn't critical for thyroid function.
Perfect. I appreciate it. Thank you.
What about pink Himalayan salt?
I mean, it's a great salt, but it's not going to be rich in iodine. Yeah. So sea salt is great. It's rich in a lot of minerals, but it doesn't have that that high concentration of iodine. So if you really want to get more iodine in your diet, seaweed, seafood, those would be, or if somebody, for example, has like symptoms like that, the breast tenderness, that type of thing, then even like one kelp capsule would be helpful, like 500, milligrams of kelp. That would be helpful.
Got it. Okay. I've got a couple questions for you. So Susan said, is ionized sea salt okay? First of all, it sounds like.
Do you mean iodized or ionized?
Ionized.
Oh, ionized.
I
don't know much about ionized sea salt. I don't know the answer to that question.
I think you meant iodine.
No, it is. Can I ask?
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I have a friend who is seeing a naturopath who said so many problems with women is because we, got rid of iodine in our salt. So I've been buying iodized sea salt. And
iodized. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it is that healthy. Like I do a mix. I'll use, some pink Himalayan, but for regular table salt, it is sea salt, but it's iodized sea salt.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. I would definitely use that. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I was trying to, because you wrote ionized. So
yeah, that's why I was like, I don't know about
It's autocorrect.
All good.
I don't know everything though. So I'm like, well, don't know much about ionized sea salt, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Then Martina said, how long should you eliminate a certain type of food to know if it's a problem?
Usually the general rule of thumb is like 3 to 4 weeks. Yeah. And then you, at that time, you can reintroduce the food back into your diet. But remember, you just only introduce one food, write down when you reintroduced it, and then journal for the next 3 days and see if any, funny symptoms come up like that, the symptoms that we discussed earlier. And if they do, then I would take it out of your diet for another like 3 months, and then you might be able to reintroduce it. The point, what you have to do is get the immune system to like tone down and, not create the antibodies, like not, get that response, because your immune system is alarmed for whatever reason when that food comes in. And so you want to tone down that response, and it might take like 3 to 6 months before your immune system is like, okay, I can handle this food on a rotational diet. Obviously, if you start eating it every day again, it could become problematic again, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And some people just don't do well in foods forever. Like, that has to do with genetics. Some people are never going to do well in cow dairy, and that's like highly genetic. And so they really just should never eat cow dairy, or maybe every once in a while as a treat, but it shouldn't be a regular part of the diet.
Right. So here's a question for you. So I ask this a lot to people. I say, what are your rules when you go to the grocery store?
Well,
so you should always have a plan, but a lot of people don't have a plan, right?
Yeah.
So what are Beth's rules when you walk into a grocery store?
I usually have a list, but that's just because if I don't have a list, then there's always 1 or 2 things I forget, and then I get home and I'm so bummed. I'm like, oh, I can't believe I forgot those things. But the perimeter, spend as much time as you can in the perimeter of the grocery store, because that's where your fresh food is. And I do read all labels, and which is a pain because now I have to put my glasses on. And but I do read all labels, and because there's been a couple of times where I think I like probably forgot my glasses, and I came home and I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe what's in this. I can't believe I just bought this. So, I really just make sure it's whole ingredients, doesn't have any of those like crazy preservatives in there. And so many foods, like I don't want soy oil, in my products, and so many like crackers and that type of thing have that in there. So I do read labels. I guess that's one of my biggest things when I'm in the middle aisles. And then
Yes.
I'm all about the farmers market, but I also have a farmers market a block and a half from my house every Sunday. And I know the farmers, and I know exactly, like, how their animals are treated, and everything about them. So I'm kind of lucky that way. That's where I get to
Yes.
shop.
Got it. So is there anything you just say, I will not eat this? The rules,
Oh
like I will
my.
not eat rules. Putting you on the spot.
Well, I've tried to like liver, and I just don't like liver. But I do like liverwurst. I just
Got
don't
it. Okay.
like chicken livers. And but uh let's see. That's a
Because
good one.
here's why I'm saying this. Because there's this thought that eat anything in moderation, it's fine. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
Well, no, I mean, not if you have not if
Right.
you don't do well with that food, because it's going to
Right.
kill you. I mean, even if you eat it in moderation, it's just going to cause like a reaction. Your immune system's going to react to it, and then that's going to lead to inflammation, and then that takes you down an inflammatory cascade, which affects your hormones and your, blood sugar and everything else. So, I do think there is some, I think moderation is good, in, like overall, but we just have to realize that we're all biochemically and genetically unique, and there are just some foods that even in moderation, maybe for you are not going to be good. Yeah.
Right.
Like obviously somebody that has celiac should not be eating gluten, right?
Sure.
In moderation, somebody that has lactose intolerance shouldn't be eating cheese in moderation. So, those are just a couple of examples. For example, I'm working with a client right now that when she eats nightshade vegetables, she breaks out in a rash, like within about half of a day. And it doesn't matter what, I mean, it can be peppers, tomatoes, eggplant. She'll break out in a rash. So for her, eating any nightshades in moderation is not a good idea, because obviously her body is saying, no, this is not good for me.
I'm sure her dermatologist probably isn't checking on her nightshades.
Luckily, she's working with a functional medicine doctor, and they figured it
Yes.
out like about 10 years ago. So she's been off of
Oh,
nightshades for a while.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
All right, here's my last question about the store. What is your alcoholic beverage of choice when you go into the supermarket?
Well, gosh, yeah.
You don't drink.
So yeah, again, that would go back to, I think, your, how well you process alcohol, and your like, if you have overgrowth of yeast, like for example, if you have overgrowth of yeast, it's probably not a good idea to drink beer or wine, right? Because then that's going to just lead to more yeast overgrowth. I would say that for somebody who actually wants like a buzz and doesn't really care what, like if it tastes good and all that, then I would probably say like an organic, like, botanical type, maybe vodka or gin or something like that, because that wouldn't affect your blood sugar so much. It wouldn't contribute to yeast overgrowth, or a really, really good tequila. Personally, I know a lot of people here, at least in California, drink wine. And, I would just also like be careful, like red wine is loaded with resveratrol, but there's easier ways to get resveratrol, right? The antioxidants. But if you are going to drink red wine, I would recommend, being careful where you're drinking it from right now, because not to be a downer, but I mean, the fires that, we've had over the last several years, starting what was it, back in 2017, all of that contamination, just going right into the soil where all those grapes are. And, got to think about that kind of stuff. So I think it's important to like kind of figure out like where to, where's my wine coming from?
Yeah, I just know that, there's a lot of my friends and community have switched away from wine and went to tequila, and it's just
Yeah.
amazing. I mean, I've seen the difference. I mean, difference in weight and body composition, but even just, I mean, a lot of these people were working out at 5:30 in the morning and hanging out on Thursday night. I remember, and just like people had energy to wake up at 5 drinking tequila, but you would never be able to do that with wine.
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Wine is, the sugar, the yeast. Yeah. There are companies that do make cleaner wines, like dry farm wines.
I was just going to say,
Yeah,
your
dry
girl.
farm
Yeah.
wines is really,
Yes.
they're getting almost all of their grapes from Europe. Yeah. From small, like biodynamic type farms in Europe. And they do, super low sugar content, carb content, yeast content. So, and people do report that that they don't feel bad when they drink dry farm wines.
I
Yeah,
I just opened up an account with them. So
good, good.
and I know your girl JJ Virgin, she's a big
She's a big
promoter.
proponent. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So does anybody
Yeah.
know who JJ Virgin is? She used to work for Designs for Health too.
I told you about her years ago.
Yes. Yeah. So Beth knows her well, right? You guys work together?
Yeah. She just she went on to do huge things, as you know. So
Yeah, but
yeah,
she used to work
yeah.
for Designs for Health as well.
Yeah, she's living in Florida now. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
all the way in Florida. Moved back.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So we got a few other questions here. Wendy got a couple questions from Wendy there. So can estrogen dominance come into effect for developing girls? If so, how to prevent that for developing kids?
Yeah. So, oh yeah, definitely. And in developing girls, a lot of it is diet. And again, back to those xenoestrogens. And I'll never forget this back. Oh gosh, this was years ago. I remember they were girls that were like, I think they were like 7 or 8 years old, were getting their periods. And it was because of all the, in Puerto Rico, they eat a lot of chicken with rice, right? It's a big food down there. And the chickens were loaded with hormones. So, it's those xenoestrogens that can, I would be very, very careful. Like if that's presenting in a teen, like, okay, where could the xenoestrogens be coming from? Really look at, what they're, and even like, unfortunately, like if a lot of foods are always wrapped in plastic, that can even be a problem. So if people are always eating processed food that's wrapped in plastic, that can be an issue, especially when they're growing up. Mm-hmm.
So so just be careful of all the prepared foods this day and age. And back in the day when Trader Joe's is the only healthy food store out there, I used to give grocery stores there, but for whatever reason, Trader Joe's kind of came into this convenience space, right? You notice how they change gears.
Yeah.
I used to do shopping tours with my clients there, but there was no Whole Foods, there was none of these other healthier
they
options.
Were like the first,
But a lot of people are under the impression that Trader Joe's is still a health food store, and I'm like,
that's a place where I would really read labels. The last time I went shopping there, I was reading all the labels, and I was just looking at like some of the hummuses and that type of thing. And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna buy any of these hummuses. They had so much crap in them. I mean, I could not believe it. And so that's where it's places like that, you really, I mean, even Whole Foods, you want to read labels. Yeah, very, very important.
So
because,
speaking of hummus,
if you're doing what?
What would be something that would be a problem for you in hummus?
Well, like for example, so believe it or not, you would think hummus would be made with olive oil, right? I mean, that's traditionally what hummus is made with, along with the tahini and all that. But like at Trader Joe's, like I noticed that a lot of the hummuses had soy oil in them, which is an omega-6 or a polyunsaturated oil. I think a lot of them have canola oil. I'm not a big fan of canola oil. So I'm not going to buy a hummus that's loaded with soy oil. And that's the thing. So many of those types of products are loaded with those type of oils. And when it comes back to hormones and inflammation, that does, like if you're doing that and eating a lot of those oils, which most Americans are probably eating a ratio of like 30 to 40 omega-6s to omega-3s. And, most functional medicine doctors want that ratio at 3 to 1 instead of like 40 to 1. And what happens is that those oils can go down these pathways that are pro-inflammatory. And if you're eating all of these omega-6s that are found in processed foods, like, even hummus and crackers and all of that type of thing, and then not getting enough of those omega-3s in your diet, you can create massive inflammation. Yeah,
Mhm.
which of course is going to affect your hormone balance and everything else.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking about plastics right now. I remember reading something a while back about how we wake up in the morning. You know, you may have your iWatch on. It's like plastic.
Yeah,
Or
yeah,
maybe your watch isn't plastic, but you hit your alarm clock, plastic, and then
yeah,
you wake up, you drink out of a plastic cup, of your tap water, and then you brush your teeth with a plastic toothbrush. You wash your hair with your plastic. Everything's plastic, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
yeah,
believe how much stuff we recycle, by the way. I mean, we hardly have any garbage anymore. We just recycle everything, but
yeah,
everything's
yeah,
plastic. It's
yeah,
even for us, like we try to do a good job, but it is convenient though to have that spinach in that plastic tin. I gotta admit,
yeah,
I mean, it's nice, right?
yeah,
You buy
yeah. And
that? You buy
you
those
just,
those those big bins of spinach and mixed leaf vegetables at like Whole Foods.
yeah,
I mean, it's convenient, right?
yeah,
Do you buy
yeah.
those?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, yes, I do sometimes, not, again, I usually buy my stuff at the farmer's market, but, and they usually put it in those like compostable, type bags. But
Yes.
yes, I do sometimes, because sometimes you just don't feel like washing your lettuce.
Right,
It's like,
exactly.
I don't have time to wash my lettuce right now. It takes
Especially
forever,
spinach. Taking the dirt
and
off the spinach.
lettuce from the farmer's market is really dirty. Like, you got to really wash it, and then you got to spin
Yeah.
it. And I usually do that, but there's some nights where I'm
Yes.
like, I'm too tired. I can't do this tonight.
Yes.
So then, yes, I totally get it. But what I would do is you just start somewhere. And, hey, you don't have to drink out of a plastic. There's no reason to drink water out of a plastic bottle. I mean, you can get, just a clean canteen or whatever, a non-plastic bottle, and just drink water out of that. Fill it up before you go out. So that's a good place to start. Another place to start is, the worst things to store in plastic would be like meats, anything that's got a lot of fat, your like meats, any type of fat. Those are the things you don't want to store in plastic, because, they'll really absorb the xenoestrogens. Right.
Mhm.
So, so the vegetables, not that it's good that they're stored in plastic, but that would probably be the least dangerous thing to be stored in plastic, compared to like meats and fats.
What do you say, like plastics? I mean, what about like BPA free? Not good to store meats in?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, BPA free doesn't really mean much, because
Right.
BPS, now they found that it's just as toxic. So it's just good to get glass containers. Just
Yes.
invest in a set, a couple sets, and just use those. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Got it.
yeah. And
Uh,
they don't cost much. I
yeah.
mean, they're not expensive at all. And just get a couple sets, a circle set and a square set, and
Yes,
then
for
you're good
sure.
to go.
So any suggestions for hypothyroid? Um, Wendy's on levothyroxine. Would love to know about how to help thyroid function in addition to meds.
Okay, so again, I don't know your full thyroid picture, and I'm assuming that the T4 and the T3 are both good right now, or
You can ask Wendy if you were there.
Oh, I mean, my numbers are coming back good right now, but
okay.
I still struggle with weight gain very, very easily. And sometimes it's just very difficult. But I also have age as a factor. I had early menopause. And so it's always a struggle.
Okay. Well, there's a couple things to look at. So because sometimes people go on thyroid hormone and their numbers improve, but they don't actually, so I would just make sure that your doctor is always doing like the full thyroid panel, which looks at, not only TSH and T4, but also T3 and reverse T3, and also, antibodies, right? So I would, thyroid antibodies, I would make sure, I don't know if your doctor did that, but I would make sure that you're doing the full thyroid panel, because that can be really telling. And then just, overall thyroid support, again, would be, making sure that your vitamin D levels are adequate, because that, the vitamin D receptors and thyroid health they're super critical. And so making sure that your vitamin D levels are, optimal, maybe like 50. So make sure that you're checking your vitamin D levels. And then also, things to just support, like selenium is a great mineral for the thyroid. You don't want to go too high in selenium, but make sure your multi has selenium in it. A product like Thyroid Synergy, for example, by Designs for Health, is great for just overall supporting like the thyroid gland. That's a really great product for people where it's not a Hashimoto's issue. Have you been checked for Hashimoto's too?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably something good to check just to be on the safe side. Yeah. You want to
Okay.
make sure you don't have those, that's not contributing.
Yes.
Because if it is contributing, it's a totally different type of treatment. Yeah, it's more of you're looking at autoimmune and how to support that.
Present differently then?
Yeah, so Hashimoto's is actually when your own body starts attacking your thyroid gland. Yeah, and so if your numbers are improving though, it's hard to tell. Like I would have to see like your full thyroid panel. It's really hard and I don't want to give you advice, on this call, but I would just say do a full thyroid panel. And if you feel like you're not progressing, like you're not moving in the right direction on your whatever you're taking right now, then I would definitely, ask for a full panel. And sometimes people, do better on different types of medications too. So you can talk to your doctor about that too.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'll have to talk my doctor into the full panel. I've only done it once, but normally they just want to check, the T3 and T4. So I'll do that though, a full panel.
Yeah,
Thank you.
ask them to look at reverse T3, have them look at antibodies. They might or might not want to do it. They're not always as open, like if it's a conventional, physician, but I would definitely have them look at that.
Very good. And I know that I often ask Beth, I say, hey, Beth, I know you're all over the Bay Area for the most part. And, do you have a naturopath or whatever it is, a functional med doctor in San Francisco? So just know if you all want someone else, like you have your primary doctor, but if you want another, a little more help, a little more of a team, sometimes a naturopath can assist you in that area a little bit better. So just remember, you can let me know and I can ask Beth for a wellness practitioner in your area as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
And a lot of these people do virtual now. Like I know Chris is going to chat with one of the ladies in San Francisco that you mentioned, and probably
Good.
never go to San Francisco.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
everything's virtual now, so it's awesome.
I know. It is.
So and then Sarah said, are there any foods we can consume to help with memory fog and skin elasticity?
Well, yes. Brain fog and memory. I mean, there's so many things that can cause, memory and brain fog. I mean, it could be an infection in your mouth. It could be gut issues. It could be, just basic inflammation, what you're eating. So that's a hard one to answer, but just like specific foods that are, normally we associate with brain health would be things like the omega-3 essential fatty acids. Things like wild blueberries are great for brain health. The less sweet, the better, right? The premium would be the Alaska wild blueberries, but those are pretty hard to get unless you go to Alaska. But that would be like the type of berry that would have the most, potential to support the brain. Green tea would be another good one. There's also been some good studies on good organic coffee for the brain, but that also depends on how well. But you can do decaf. But yeah, there's some studies there if you can handle, coffee. And also there's great herbs for the brain, great herbs. And so I would really encourage, like if you go to Whole Foods or you go to the farmer's market to buy herbs whenever you can and use them whenever you can, like fresh rosemary. I mean, I absolutely love rosemary. I just eat it like raw, but even putting it in tea or adding it to roasted vegetables, rosemary is a really potent anti-inflammatory and it's really great for the brain. If you like turmeric, I would, highly recommend using turmeric, also super good for the brain. And just all of those spices we just don't use culinary spices enough, and we forget like how much therapeutic value is in those culinary spices. Yeah. And also really dark chocolate too is good for the brain, but it's got to be dark.
You know, you lost me on eating raw rosemary.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know, instead of like, I'll just pick it right off the little, you know, how you buy the
Yeah.
branches, like the little branches. I'll just
You
pick
just
it
eat
off
it.
and eat it like that. Yeah.
Wow.
I love it. I love it. And I do really feel like it affects my brain. Also, as far as another herb that, you know, is usually within a supplemental form, ashwagandha is really, really great for the brain. Ashwagandha.
Yes.
It's also very calming. You know, it's calming. It's great, you know, for the adrenals, but it also is loaded with nootropic factors that are good for the brain. So, focus, Brien. It's you should check it out. FX, just type in FX when you shop and it'll come up focus. It's amazing. The feedback I'm getting is phenomenal.
That's a product that you have?
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
chocolate.
Oh,
So
okay.
basically it's a supplement surrounded by artisanal chocolate from Ecuador.
Okay.
It's amazing. One
Okay.
square only has 15 calories and 0 glycemic index, and it has 300 milligrams of ashwagandha in it. And it's a patented form of ashwagandha that is heavily weighted with the nootropic factors. So I've had people like actually emailing me and saying they notice a difference with 1 square. So
we need to get that. Hello. Like stat. Like I will be at the top of any leaderboard possible to get that.
That's funny. So
it's awesome, and it's really yummy too. It's so yummy. It's like hard to eat one. I'm like, oh, I want another one.
Really? Yeah.
I do really love your glasses, by the way. Those are phenomenal.
Thank you.
So, couple things. So, and if anybody else has any questions, please chat in the box. But have you had anybody? You know, we talked about blood sugar handling a little bit, and we talked about digestion a lot, but blood sugar handling. Have you had anybody utilize the Libre glucometer?
Yes. In fact, I just used it myself a few weeks ago. And
isn't that thing awesome?
What? It's
Isn't it
awesome. I
love
highly
it.
recommend, if you can get your physician to prescribe it and do it for like $30, $40, I highly recommend it. And it comes with refills. So you can do it for, you know, yes. And what I found, Brien, really surprised me is things that I thought were going to, you know, raise my blood sugar didn't.
Yes.
And things that I didn't think were going to raise my blood sugar did. But what's very interesting about that continuous glucose monitor was that, you know, I noticed that my glucose, because of stress, was going up like when I'm trying to get out the door in the morning. You know, you've got a meeting and you're running around and you've got all this stuff to do. And so often it was more my stress levels than what I was eating that was affecting my glucose. So it goes back to stress management, and you know, because that really does affect your glucose levels big time.
Yeah.
And something that I think is important for everyone here to know is that you know, it also can tell you whether or not intermittent fasting, like, so yes, you should, you know, having some, for example, type of, like, you know, going at least 12 hours without eating is great. We all know that we need to give our digestive system a break. We need to give ourselves a chance to get into, you know, for our cells to repair and heal. But sometimes what happens is when people go too long and their hormones are imbalanced, like their adrenal glands are, you know, not in good shape, and they're burnt out, they're not regulating glucose well, partly because of their adrenal glands. What happens is that the intermittent fasting causes more stress, causes cortisol to go up. And I've worked with a couple of people so far on that continuous glucose monitor that they were actually making their glucose go even higher when they were fasting. So I also, you know, I'm a Bredesen trained practitioner, and as you know, the keto diet is really something big in that community for people that have mild cognitive impairment or are on their way to Alzheimer's disease, because the ketogenic diet is found to be really helpful there. And what's interesting is they have found this whole subset of people now that when they intermittent fast for too long, their fasting glucose, instead of going down, it actually goes up. And there is going to be a study coming up where they're going to look at other hormones like cortisol and glucagon to understand what's going on. So I just think it's really important, again, to always go back to what works for you, not what works for everybody. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I think of hormonal balance, again, I think of one of the big things is that blood sugar balance. We've talked a lot about it today, and it's hard to, I mean, like, it's hard to know what to even do after this, probably, for folks. Like, where do I go with this? That's like so much information, but it's getting easier, with tools like this.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, and that's one thing I've learned. I mean, I'm doing this for 31 years now. As Beth mentioned, she said something to the extent of one man's fuel is another man's poison, right? Or women's in this case. There's no men here. But yeah, we have ways to test this stuff, right? So my recommendation to everybody, and I know this is Beth's as well when she's working with people, is, we're kind of throwing out some recommendations right now, and Little Black Dress program has a recommended food strategy. But if you can get your hands on a glucometer, specifically that Libre glucometer, and you kind of have to, sometimes you're going to plead your doctors. You kind of have to exaggerate sometimes, because most of you are not diabetic, because you're working on things. But just, you may be pre-diabetic or whatever. Just exaggerate your symptoms so your doctor just writes you a prescription. Just say, doctor, just make it worse than it is. I'm having a lot of trouble. I really can't lose weight. I'm having some brain fog, and I heard about this glucometer thing called Libre. Just try to get him to write off on it, and see if you can even try it for a month, because you're going to have to pay cash for it. Sure, it's not necessarily going to cover it all, but it may be like $40 a month, or just get it for 1 month. It was awesome when I had it. So telling. Yeah.
And I think when I think of hormonal balance, especially for women going through perimenopause and early menopause, I think of, just like the big word that comes to mind for me is nourish in, every way possible. Like, give yourself a break, really, like, whatever works for you for stress management, focus on that, because that's going to affect your hormones, especially like cortisol, which then affects your thyroid gland, which then affects your metabolism and your ability to lose weight. I mean, there's just so much. And then the blood sugar regulation, it might, if you're like, oh, I'm going to do this intermittent fasting and I'm not going to eat for like, 24 hours and I'm going to eat for, those kind of things can actually, in women, especially when hormones are fluctuating, can actually cause more problems. So it's just good to like, look, okay, what stage of life am I in? Right. And what's going to work for me. The continuing, I would highly recommend it. I was floored, but I have to say, on a very positive note, I love dark chocolate, and I was freaking out. Like, I'm like, if my square of dark chocolate in the afternoon causes my blood sugar to go up, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And it didn't. Yes. Thank God. So I lucked out.
That's good. And then just on that note too, I was just thinking, we know that, or we're told that high intensity exercise is very, helpful. But again, when we know more information, if let's say your blood sugar levels were skyrocketing and you're fasting and you're just stressed running out of the house, well, the high intensity exercise is probably going to also create more stress too. So that would be a great time to chill and be in that aerobic zone a little bit more, so we don't increase cortisol anymore. Again, it's just more information, right? So if you can get more information, then we can, again, when we use that heart rate monitor, we can use that monitor for more information as well.
Yeah.
Really. And then the last piece of testing that's pretty inexpensive is our Great Plains laboratory tests, right? So Beth got me I hooked up with that company, so I'm now able to run food sensitivity tests, and that's been really great, Beth. I've done a lot, and I've had a lot of folks do it. And I would say there's 2 foods I've found that are the most common culprits for most people.
Yeah. And
so, first one's dairy. So 9 out of 10 people will have a dairy issue. But my big finding has been that goat cheese or goat's milk, goat cheese isn't that likely to be a common inflammatory food. So that
Mm,
was one of my
that
takeaways.
makes me very happy.
Yes. But yeah, whey protein and
Mhm.
yeah, I mean cheese and dairy and all that stuff. Not good.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, my other takeaway, which I kind of knew, but I didn't think it was as bad, was eggs. 7 out of 10 people,
Mm.
eggs. And not the yolks, but the whites.
The whites. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Way
And
more than gluten. Like,
yeah.
I thought that was interesting. I was expecting more gluten issues, but maybe I have a little bit of a self-selective crowd as well because people are already informed about gluten and not eating it all the time.
That
So
could
that's
be.
probably influencing my results. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know folks with autoimmune will definitely like, they just eat the egg yolks, for the vitamin A and D and lecithin and choline and all that good stuff in there. And it's interesting. I've always gravitated towards the yolk. I don't like the whites. Like I'm always cutting all the white out and just eating the yolk anyway. So it's maybe I don't do well with. I've never tested
yes,
though positive for that, but
interesting.
yeah,
It's because you don't need it.
interesting.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting how sometimes we just know.
That's probably the most important thing is to listen and just be aware. Yes.
Yeah,
Well, that's
yeah.
good. Does anybody have any burning questions? Uh, please let us know. We've covered a lot of information. Does anybody feel lost right now?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there some place that there's a summary, Brian and Beth? Like, I mean, so much information. I'm like, oh my God, I want to do this, and then I forget already. So,
Yes.
I just like a
Yeah.
book or anything you can recommend, Beth, that it's, kind of all put together for us.
Yeah, well, let me talk to Brian about that because, it was pretty informal today. So, what do you think, Brian?
Well, I don't have a book, but here's my summary again. So again, I just think of it in two key areas: digestion, blood sugar balance,
Hmm.
and then the bigger piece of all of this is stress, right? So I mean that's kind of my summary of the way I look at things.
Yeah.
How many different ways can we reduce stress?
Mhm.
There's a big digestive component. There's a blood sugar component. In regards to, we talked about plastics. It's not really in that category, but that's, those are environmental stressors that can throw us out of whack as well, right? So,
Yeah.
how many different ways can we reduce stress? We
Hmm.
just touched a little bit on intensity of exercise. Too much of a good thing will increase your stress, throw off your hormones.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
yeah,
think too, if you're not sleeping well, that's huge. And that, definitely work with Brian, on that because, if you're not sleeping well, you can't repair while you're sleeping and that will throw off your hormones the next day too. And that was something I actually saw with the continuous glucose monitor is that there was a couple nights where I didn't sleep well and my blood sugar was so messed up the next day. I
yes,
just,
for sure.
yeah. It was like going actually too low. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we talked a lot about adding those greens, those um, alkaline-based greens
Yeah.
for estrogen dominance, right?
Yep. Yeah. And for detox, just
And
basically
detoxification.
detoxification of the hormones.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
All of our
And
cruciferous veggies.
the good fats would be, definitely a category you really want to look at, as much as you can get in, like of the omega-3s. So if you like fatty fish and, again, always rotate even the fish because of the, issues. Like I once spoke to a doctor who said, if you rotate your foods, you're not going to accumulate too much of any one heavy metal. So,
Yes. I
yeah.
did. Speaking about fish, I learned about a tuna called Safe Catch. Are you familiar with that company?
Yeah, they're in Sausalito, aren't they? I think
I
they're
don't
in
know where they're from, but I
Sausalito.
saw them on Shark Tank, and they were explaining how they get rid of the mercury in their tuna fish. I thought that was
Yeah.
interesting.
I
So I
spoke
did
to them
buy it.
once. Yeah.
It's really good too.
Yeah.
It's outstanding
I was
product.
supposed to go visit them and then something happened, but I was going to go visit their
Yes.
facility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
omega-3 fatty acids, again,
Hmm.
fish oils, fish, and again, even for, like you just said, rotating fish, I often rotate fish oils. So like cod liver oil, often good to have during the winter months because it has vitamin D, and then
Yeah.
different types of fish oils in the summer months,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Um, Anything else? And again, the name of the you mentioned the vegetables, sulfate,
A
sorry.
sulforaphane, yeah, the vegetables that
Sulforaphane.
are, yeah, the cruciferous vegetables are very rich. They produce sulforaphane in the body, put it that way, and that's
Yes.
going to really be amazing for detoxification.
Yes.
So yeah, and those good fats, of course, an adequate amount of protein to support your musculoskeletal health, and lots of just your low starch vegetables. But if you want carbohydrates, go for the higher starch vegetables. They're rich in fiber and they have a lot of nutrients, and things like your beets and sweet potatoes every once in a while, because sometimes you need something to raise the serotonin levels. Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
All right. Anything else, guys? I saw Michelle just joined us recently. Hello, Michelle. Any last questions? I think we're good.
Yeah. Well, it was fun. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me. And
Yes, appreciate it.
yeah, next time we'll do like maybe some bullet points for
Yes.
people. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Sarah said she was going to share her notes as well.
Oh, okay. Yay, Sarah. All right. Thank you, Sarah, for taking
Great.
notes.
And if anybody does need
You got it.
any clinical practitioners, Susan just recommended Nicole McCarter. Are you familiar with her, Beth?
I don't know if I know Nicole.
Peninsula Integrative Docs.
Yeah,
Nicole
where is
McCarter.
she on the peninsula? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. Okay.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, everybody. And for all of our Little Black Dress people, we got a check-in meeting tomorrow at noon, 12, and I'll love to see you there. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. Bye.
Get some sleep.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.